That is a tough record button.
Hit record.
Is that what you did?
Are you ready?
Mhm.
All right, everyone's attention forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. We were the group assigned to watch the Apocalypse Now movie. There we go. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola. You are just being.
I can do it on
Here.
the computer.
Yeah, can you? Yeah. There we go. The movie is set during the Vietnam War. And it is focused on a Willard. I can't remember his last name. Charles. Captain Willard. All right. Okay. Captain Willard. At first, he's just currently on leave, just waiting for another mission. It's kind of just growing inside him. He just wants to get back into the war. He just loves doing it. And it's kind of breaking him, really, while he's just waiting for something, because it's just a lull of nothing. And that's the start of the entire thing. There are several narrative spines to the movie, but the one overarching is what he gets as a mission for the movie, and that is to find a Colonel Kurtz. Apparently, Colonel Kurtz has gone insane and has gone deep into the heart of Cambodia, and it is Willard's mission to go in and kill him. The movie is basically a complete parallel to the story Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, which is a story about another group of military officials going into actually the heart of Africa to find a certain official. For different reasons, but still there. The several other narrative spines are just, The key focus is obviously Willard and Kurtz. Willard being kind of both contrasting each other while at the same time being the exact same, at least by the end of the movie. One is, Willard is the beginning point of basically war, while Kurtz is the end point. Willard is just war hungry, kind of a bit emotionless, doesn't see kind of the truths to what war can actually bring, what it can truly cause to people. Meanwhile, Kurtz, when we finally see him, we don't really see him until the end of the movie, but we hear so much about him. We hear he is a well-decorated officer. He has done many amazing feats. And at the end, with all these decorations, feats, he's ostracized, marked for insane, and just hired to be assassinated. But when we do see him, he doesn't seem insane. He's a very well-literate, educated man who understands a whole lot more, while Willard doesn't really understand dick. But when the two finally meet, they kind of mesh up. Willard begins to start understanding things as Kurt tries to move his position onto Willard. Throughout the movie, we see multiple stops at military bases. And at each one of these bases, we get an increasing representation of what Western imperialism is like. The first time we meet up with a base, we meet up with a Colonel Kilgore. And he's just a completely carefree, doesn't fear anything really, because he just somehow knows he's going to get out of this alive. down in the bottom right here. He's literally, there's a war going on behind him. He just strips down to his pants and he orders half of his army to just go out surfing while the other goes fighting. And to be honest, he let them choose which one they wanted to do. He just kind of made it his own little place. And he also just loves war, the fact that when they do send napalm down, he just tells everyone to just take a deep breath in, and I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It's just one of the famous lines in this movie. Another stop is deeper into the heart of the jungle, and they send, for the soldiers' enjoyment, Playboy girls. And again, they are just enjoying themselves, even getting a bit too touchy with the girls and causing them all to flee. But it shows that they're really not caring about what's going on, because their Vietnamese prisoners are still just like over to the side having a bowl of rice. And they don't care about the prisoners, they don't care about the war outside. We don't even really see explosions here. This is a very carefree zone. As we go deeper in, it gets a bit more hectic, more hellish actually, just fire spewing everywhere almost, thanks to explosions and crashes. And kind of the big thing about the imperialism thing is that with all these areas, we just make it, instead of us going into Vietnam to save them, we kind of went in and lived there. We made it our own place. One of the key symbols in the film is the river, which symbolizes a lot of things: safety, change, and escape. Safety for the fact that almost everything bad that did happen was not on the river. When one of the crew members got off, he was attacked by a tiger, and he flipped shit. He ran back onto the boat. He's like, never going off the boat again. Nope, nope. However, as they go further down the river, going from base to base, everything starts changing. It goes from a civilized, carefree area to a hectic, primal, hellish region. However, despite all of this going to Kurtz, going into basically hell, it is also the river that gets them out of there at the end of their mission. And one of the other key motifs that they had was just darkness and the use of masks. Not just literal physical masks, but using the lighting, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation, just using the lighting as a form of masks. It is to more or less shield yourself away from the horrors of the world, but also to show that you are a different person on the inside than what you show. It's used multiple times, whether it be from a mud mask at the end, or obviously the shadows. Kurtz doesn't really have a full face view throughout any point that he's actually seen, and when we do actually see his full face, it's covered up in face paint. We see this with the crew members as well sometimes. Some of them, not physical masks, but kind of an escape from the horrors of war. They go into drugs, go into just the love letters that they had from their families, wives, and even at one time, just one of them is just slowly, because of the drugs, starts putting just the mud and stuff, just camo masking his face as well, and he eventually almost goes native. All of these symbols are used to emphasize just the horrors of war, and even at the end we hear Kurtz saying the horror as his last dying breath.
Okay, I was assigned to do lighting and color. So, go down a little bit. So the director uses a lot of dark lighting and shadows to help create mood and tone for the scene. And he also uses low-key lighting to create a sense of darkness and emptiness for the main character. And pictures. Oh, there we go. So, as a beginning scene opens up, the room is mostly dark. So that's the darkness and helps create like a sad, miserable tone. And then, on the main character's face, the director decided to use like a hard light to show the sharp edges and the emotional fight that he's going through within himself. And there's one interesting scene where he's looking outside and the only light is coming from the outside world, and that represents the struggle to escape war and be able to function in the real world. Mid-key lighting is also used to get kind of half light, half dark on his face, and again showing his internal struggle. When he's sitting on the ground, his shadow is in front of him, in that one, so it represents his struggle to move forward as a person. And the low brightness helps to describe a darker story for the tone and the setting. And then for color, yeah, there you go. So for the color, there's lots of yellow smoke and saturated colors in the scene and throughout the film. And one major theme is the different colors of smoke. For example, the yellow and red represented chaos and destruction, because throughout the whole film, wherever you saw like a red smoke, people get killed or something bad happened. So it's one major theme of color. And it creates a sense of danger and uncertainty for the characters. And also in the beginning, like the beginning scene opens up with like a green jungle color, like it's very peaceful, but then once the war happens, it's like the destruction of man versus nature, because it starts out good colors but then turns into like red and smoky colors. And red is a major theme because of the blood and the bombs going off. So, and it shows a sense of loss and pain for the characters.
I did composition and movement. Basically, composition in a film refers to the way a scene is arranged in order to give the viewer a better understanding as to what it is they are seeing. And then movement can either refer to movement of the characters or movement of the camera to tell a story between the different elements on screen. And so in this first shot, we see our main character, Willards. He's upside down, which gives us a sense that he's not balanced in his life, and also he's off to the left side of the screen, and on the right side we get a couple images of his thoughts and everything. And it really tells us that he's not where he wants to be in his life, and he's very confused. Through the next couple of shots, he's seen looking out of the window. To me, this seemed like he was almost like an animal trapped in a cage, and he's very unsure of where he is. He doesn't really have a place to go. He said that he went back home, but then it didn't work out between him and his wife because he always was thinking about war. And then when he's in war, he's just thinking about getting out. And then sort of towards the end of the film, we have him come out of the water. This is after he decides that he's going to kill Kurtz, and he's made his final decision. He sort of has like this rebirth out of the water, and he's very centered in the camera frame, which is like he's usually off to the side. And in this scene, this is the shot right after that, he gets out of the water and then he goes from a kneeling position to a standing position, and that's showing him finally taking back the power in his life and showing that he can be stronger than Kurtz. And then when he actually enters the temple to kill Kurtz, for the first time he is shown standing above Kurtz, since Kurtz is always either above him or sitting down next to him. But this is the first time we have him standing up and Kurtz in a seated position. Also, Kurtz is shown in shadow, which is something that is almost always done throughout the film. And then this is the final shot, well, not the final shot, but the final scene, when he emerges victorious from the temple. We have a lower camera angle, and to make him look more powerful, and he's standing next to this godlike figure, showing that the natives now see him as a god, and he's taken the place that Kurt once had. And it's also, Kurt was standing here just a few moments ago before he was killed, but now Willards has taken his place. And then instead of becoming the god, he decides to drop his weapon and lower himself and walk down the stairs, and then he leaves.
So as we know, there are 5 types of montage known as the Soviet montage theory: metric, rhythm, tonal, overtonal, and intellectual. The first one I want to show you is tonal.
You just pull it over there. You're gonna.
So I chose this as there might not be I chose this as an example of tonal montage because there's an overlapping of different images. He's laying in bed and watching the ceiling fan above him and thinking back to his time at war. I chose this next one for rhythmic montage because it cuts between the soldiers going to battle, and it also shows the village that they're about to attack. The cuts with the soldiers are very fast paced, and once it actually gets to the village, it kind of slows down its pace a little bit to show that it's more of a surprise attack rather than something they're already anticipating. And the final one I would like to talk about is intellectual. In the final scene where Colonel Kurtz is finally killed, while Captain Willard is in the process of killing him, it jumps to scenes of the people outside slaughtering a bull at the same time. Any questions?
I think it's kind of interesting that you guys see the river as being a sense of safety, whereas because there's a lot of death that ends up happening on the river itself. Whereas because I think that like the whole war zone itself is basically it's all dangerous. There's really no safe place to hide through it. Whereas throughout the story, they're approaching a boat that they think that might be somebody that might be of harm to them, and then they end up taking them out, and they find out that they're completely innocent, and it's just like a trader's boat with just goods on it, or they find they find a cat on board, and then also later on, before they reach the temple, they're all on the remaining guys are still on the boat, and then they're basically attacked by people with, or like the native people with bow and arrow, and somebody actually is killed by an arrow after the attack. So I think it's kind of interesting that you guys see that there's like this sense of safety on the river. So I understand what you're saying, where the guy, when he got off the boat, to go and try and find some mangoes, and then he basically comes across a tiger and runs back to the boat, and he's saying, oh, well, I'm never getting off the boat, like, screw that. And there's they kind of feel safe on the boat because they're in the middle of the water, they're kind of isolated, but at the same time, there's this danger that is always like encroaching on them.
That is true, and I do admit I did skip on that. I was intending to say that further down the river it does get more and more dangerous, and eventually one of their people actually dies because they relied too much on the safety of the river. They believe he was literally just standing out there in the open, not really caring, and then a spear just goes right through him. It is safe to an extent. Like, obviously the tiger can't swim and claw them to death right there.
I'm sorry, I got a whole bullshit. There's no safety in the river at all.
No
There's
safety?
fees
All right.
That have anything to do with safety. I'm gonna just kind of trudge through this because I want the groups to get up there. Did you guys rehearse together ever?
We didn't get a chance.
Yeah, it shows. I think the people who did rather well, I think Mia had some good readings going on, especially with the compositions. I think you did a really good job with that. I don't buy that it's about him taking charge of his life, you know, it's more about transformation. He's turned into Kurtz. I think that's an important notion, specifically because it's, you know, kind of based on Heart of Darkness, which is about participation in this kind of Western imperialism. You become kind of this mad god to the natives, and it's a power-hungry position. Jenna, I think, like Nia, you did a good job of setting the audience up, and I like the fact that both of you, just in case we didn't know, you set up exactly, well, what is composition, what is montage theory, right? That's a good thing. I don't know if you fully understand rhythmic montage, so I would re-evaluate that. Your intellectual montage could be better explained, although it was a good catch. That is a very good intellectual scene. But what we're dealing with is the sacrificial, right? Not necessarily about slaughter, which it is slaughter, but it's also not sacrificial. This has a key there. Nick, I think you really need to be more clear in your research. I think you're spending a lot of time with interpretations that have nothing to do with what you're actually doing, right? Stop making everything about being some kind of lesson to be learned, right? This kind of goes beyond that literary reading of things. And Jared, the same thing. You rambled forever. You practice. You know. I mean, honestly, I saw my notes, like, did you do any research? I asked for narrative spines, you gave me absolutely no narrative spines. And it really kind of came off as like a rose interpretation of the film versus something that's well researched from the basis of literary reference, which is Heart of Darkness. You never really quite fully explained that reference, nor do you fully explain the actual contents of the film. It was all about the kind of segments which you interpreted yourself. That's not research. Research is the acquisition of new knowledge and be able to synthesize that and repeat it to other people. I don't think you participated in that, and I think that's unfortunate. So think about that. I would like to see you do well, but it's not. It turned out so great so far. All right, next group. Let's try to move this on. We have 15 minutes to get two groups going, so let's make it quick.